Hey, what's going on, everybody? Happy Sunday. So, as usual, before we start, I always like to make sure I'm live because I was trying to use a different program today and it looks like we're going to be back on StreamYard. So, let me make sure I'm live in the StreamYard so you guys can check it out and we will get this Sunday started. So, let me just make sure it's live. Uh oh. Oh no, what's going on? All right, sorry, you guys. I just want to make sure we're live because I tried a different program. Oh no, what's going on? All right, so we're live. So just to make sure that we're not streaming this and that it ends up on the YouTube when we finish. All right, so welcome back. Happy Sunday to everybody. Happy Sunday. If you're new to the channel, please don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and hit that notification bell to know when we go live over here on the channel. I'm trying to try something different. I got like a little background going on, different things like that. So let me know how you guys feel about this. If you are watching the this on the replay, don't be shy to comment below and let us know what you're thinking and how you're feeling about the housing market. Hey, what's going on, MHO8 62 now? Or is it Merrimax? Memorex. I don't know what you're saying. I'm confused. Memorex. Am I saying it right? Memorex. Hey, what's going on, son of Jaxer? Staying alive. Yes, staying alive. Yes. I don't know if I missed something. I might have missed a comment or something, but thank you guys for joining. So before we kind of hit this, is the housing market? Oh, are you saying is it Miramex? Okay, I think I get what you're saying there. Memorex. I mean, now that you're saying that MHOA. So is the housing market repeating itself? That is the purpose of the live tonight. Hey, what's going on, Eddie? Thanks for joining. Thanks for joining. He said, "Love the room at Clark." Yes, I wish it was my actual room. It's just the backdrop, but thank you. I got to figure out how to get some things together. Once I can get some things together, we'll be good to go. Hey, what's going on, Dad? So, before we jump into this, let's go and let's check out the let's just check out what the if you guys don't know, the Feds are meeting this week as well. I believe it's Wednesday and Thursday. So we are going to see if there are any type of movement towards the, let's see, we'll show the Fed stuff so you guys can see when they're meeting. We're going to see if there's any type of movement when it comes to the interest rates as far as base points. They are supposed to, people are predicting that they'll probably drop it about 0.25 base points. So we'll see what happens. They meet the 28th and the 29th in regards to the Fed. So we'll see if those base points kind of move. We'll see what it does. We also know, if you guys have been researching, watching different real estate channels, watching how mortgage channels, lender channels, or just hearing about the conversation around housing and how the interest rates move, that the Feds affect the short term and not the long term gain when it comes to like the interest rates. However, traditionally they kind of ran tandem with each other, that if the interest rates went down, that you usually would see mortgage rates or those long term rates kind of ease down a little bit. But we've been noticing lately that that is not how things are pulling in regards to the interest rates when it comes to short term meet that long term gain. I'm not a lender, I'm not a financier, I'm not an economist, I'm just a real estate agent. But if you guys understand how real estate works, you'll look at the bigger picture around the economic system in the US or globally, right? So we know that they meet the 28th and 29th. We'll see what happens in regards to those base points, and we will switch over to, from there, we'll switch over to let's go over sorry guys, we are now going to look at the, let me get off of this. So we've got rid of that one. We're now going to look at the 10-year treasury. So the 10-year is what people look at in regards to the mortgage rates. So we'll look at the 10-year treasury. We're at 4.003%. We were recently at under 4 at 3. Let's not go this way. We were under 4 at 3. Let's go down here. So they closed just recently at the 3.997. So they were a little under, and it went back up in regards to it being at 4.003%. So they're trying to get it under a certain, of course, under the 4% closer, like in the threes per se, to hopefully see some type of jump or some type of more of a movement when it comes to the mortgage rates. But that's where we are at right now with that 10-year treasury. So if you're interested in the 10-year treasury, head over to CNBC, and you can check out the US 10-year treasury in regards to mortgage rates. To kind of, maybe if you're looking to buy a house right now, looking to sell a house, can kind of see how things are moving. All right, so we'll jump off of that. And we will jump over now to, so I just want to get some of this, the finance and stuff out the way. Again, I'm not a lender, I'm not a financier, I'm a realtor, but we do have to have conversations around finances, because if you're financing a home to purchase, you ultimately will be, using a loan, and you want to look at this, like things like that. So also let me know how the sound is going as well, you guys. Let me know if the sound sounds clear enough. If not, I will change. So now let's jump over to where the mortgage rates are currently at. So we're in the weekend now, on the weekend, which is Sunday. So we might see some shift tomorrow, Monday. We're not sure. We'll see what happens. Sounds great. Thank you, MHOA. Appreciate it. So we might see a shift. They might go up. They might go down. You guys, mortgage rates shift every minute, every day, every hour. So right now they closed out on Friday. The mortgage rates closed out. So this is nationally when it comes to mortgage rates, right? So we all know that this does not mean you will see this rate if you apply for a loan today from a lender. Everything goes based off of different type of scenarios, right? Your debt to income ratio, different layers and different things kind of play around to give you that interest rate. So hey, what's going on, Lang? Thanks for joining us tonight. We're just browsing through some quick what they call household items, I guess you could say, on YouTube, just talking about the different things in regards to interest rates, the Fed's meeting this week and things like that, before we kind of jump into, is the housing market repeating itself? So as we can see, we have the conventional 30-year fix nationally was at 6.19, 15-year fix was 5.76, again conventional. A jumbo was at 30-year fix was 6.14, sorry. So they actually rose, because you see the pluses right here with the red, so they rose. But you have your 7.6, the ARM right here at 5.8. Your 30-year FHA fix nationally 5.95, 30-year fix where your VA 5.9. And we can let's click real quick. Hopefully, I don't know if it's gonna if you guys will see it when it changes the screen. Let me see if it changes screen. Okay, yeah. So we can see with the VA how it went down right here, the 20th, 21st, 22nd, then it increased at some points. So again, we all know mortgage rates swing up, swing down. It can happen daily, it can happen weekly, it can happen monthly. You never know, hourly, minute, things like that. So all right, so we'll stop sharing that in regards to the mortgage rates. If you guys want more information in regards to mortgage rates, you can always check out mortgagedailynews.com. You can also download the app. I also have the app in my phone because I always want to kind of see where mortgages and what's going on in the financial market. So you can definitely go over there and check that out. Hey, what's going on, David? Thanks for joining us. If you guys don't know David Matney, he is a realtor out of Omaha, Nebraska. He has a YouTube channel called Living in Omaha with David Matney. So definitely go over to his channel and subscribe, show him some love, and check out his lives. He does a live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern time, but he's on Central time. So thanks for being here tonight, David. And Eddie Smallhorn, who is related to Christina Smallhorn, they have a YouTube channel too that they do every Sunday prior to me jumping on here at 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. Again, the time is different depending on what sector you're in, Central or West, or that West Coast time. But definitely check out their channel as well. Subscribe and check out the lives. David, thanks, David. Thanks. He says set looks great. Yes, it's a backdrop, so I gotta figure out how to create a really live or a more live set. So now let's jump into, is the housing market repeating itself? So I found this very interesting, and most people might have already heard other people kind of talking about, is the housing market repeating itself, what's kind of going on. Are we seeing, if you been hearing people talk about stagflation, different things. And so I started reading more about, which I was reading about this article, and they were basically comparing the housing market to the late 1970s, early 1980s, that time frame in which Reagan was in office, but also kind of pushing it before Reagan when Richard Nixon was in office, and how during his time he kind of created that inflation, that rising of economic turmoil, and then it kind of bled over into Reagan's term. And then of course people feel like Trump administration is mirroring what Reagan was doing with the whole Make America Great Again, right? So thanks, Eddie. I appreciate you being here, showing some love. I really truly appreciate it. Everybody that joins in, thank you. He said, keep up the great work. Thank you. I appreciate it. So we're going to just dive into a little bit of this article. You guys, let me know your thoughts, how you're feeling about this housing market, what's happening. But I found this, very interesting to the times. So it says, we've seen this market cycle before, sort of. In the 1980s, mortgage rates and home prices soared after a housing boom, then sales dried up, much like today's market. Will our recovery look similar to? So this, the person who wrote this article is David Gallagher over at Real Estate News. He wrote this article. Did MHOA say guns and butter plus the oil shocks? Is that some stuff that kind of took place during that Reagan time, that Richard Nixon time? I wasn't born yet during this time, but just reading more, diving into what's happening with the housing market. You got to know what they say. You have to know the future. You have to know the past to understand the future. And things are kind of cyclical, and things, they go up, they go down. They're ever changing. They're ever repeating itself. History repeats itself, right? David Matney said Nixon tried price control, not the best strategy. Yes, that's what I was reading as far as him trying to control prices. He did stuff around the HUD and everything, and all those different things to try to kind of control the economical, I guess you can say, sense of what was happening around us in America at that time. So I found it very interesting. Like I said, as I kept reading up on it, trying to make comparison to what's happening now, because I'm seeing a lot of the housing market was happening, especially when you're on the ground. Even though we know every housing market is different, it's not the same. There's different things happening in Georgia that might not be happening in New York or New Jersey or or California. So it's very, very interesting. It says 2 years ago the housing market was in deja vu moment. Let me see. Sorry, you guys. 1 second. It says 2 years ago the housing market was in deja vu moment, exhibiting striking similarities. Things always come up when I'm trying to do something. Sorry. Okay, sorry about that, y'all. Exhibiting striking similarities to the market of the early 1980s, according to First American chief economist Mark Fleming. And we're going to dive into a video with Mark Fleming talking after we finish this article. I couldn't find nothing recent with him talking on a live, but I found a video of him in 2019, and he was kind of talking about how the 2019 housing market was doing very good, but the guy asked him, well, could interest rates rise, and what could it mean for the housing market? And I found it, very interesting what he said in regards to what is happening right now. It says, and now the market is still stuck in that decades old cycle, but it looks like it may start to head in a different direction. Echoes of the past. Between 1978 and 1982, a demographic shift was affecting the market. Baby boomers were in their prime home buying years, lending to a surge in sales. Home prices and inflation spiked, which we're kind of seeing now, right? We have the millennial sector of people, myself included. We're in our years of trying to purchase homes, want to create families in America. We're all living up to this whole American dream of being able to actually buy houses, create a family, the white picket fence, the kids, the car, the nice job. Hopefully in your 30s, you get you kind of enter, or in your late 20s, you enter into your job. You grow up the job ladder, and by your your late 30s, early 40s, hitting into maybe your early 50s, you probably see a growth as far as your salary, right? You go from making 5 figures to making 6 figures and getting up and growing up the ladder. David said, we had really high inflation. There were lines at the gas station. We had a severe recession with 18% mortgage interest rates. Exactly. Like around that time, I was a baby, right? So I wasn't seeing everything that was happening economically, but knowing that around that time, inflation was very high. Mortgage rates were high. People were buying houses and they were getting mortgages at 17, 18%. So it's definitely kind of repeating itself. The only difference now is that I feel like it's kind of opposite from what I'm looking at. And let me know your thoughts, you guys, in regards to the home prices are high, but interest rates have subsided to between that 5 to 6, 7, 8% range, which is a typical normal range for interest rates. And however, the home prices are so high, which is making the mortgage extremely high. When back in the late 70s, early 80s, and into that late 80 period, the interest rates were so high and the home prices were lower, even though they were rising a little bit, but they weren't $500,000 like they are now. David said, my dad sold my sister a home and charged her 10%. Oh, your dad said, I'm going to let you learn the right way. He said, there's no shortcomings over here. MHOA said, when gas stations had to use Magic Marker to add the $1 to the gas prices. Oh, wow. They were using the Magic Marker to add $1 to gas prices. It's so crazy because now looking back into like the 90s, and it's like, wow, you don't realize, or even, the 80s or the 70s. Like I said, I was a baby around that time in the 80s, or a young, little kid. You don't realize how much of a difference the world is changing, even though we know the world changes, but it's definitely a difference. However, it's very, it's a historically, it repeats itself too, but just in another form. So it's very interesting. Just like everybody say, fashion, repeats itself too. It says, but as mortgage rates jumped to combat inflation, home sales fell 50% while prices continued to climb, creating a significant affordable gap. So again, like we're seeing now, home sales are starting to drop in regards to, it's not that many homes selling like they were a couple years ago. However, prices continue to climb, and that created an affordability gap outside of those interest rates as well. And it says, sound familiar? A similar series of events occurred between 2021 and 2025 as larger demographic group millennials entered their peak home buying years. The pandemic served as a plot twist, sending the mortgage rates to historic lows, which added fuel to sales booms before inflation arrived. And so in this particular situation, 2021 to 2025, yes, you have the demographic of millennials wanting to purchase a house, but you also had a big shift of investors coming in, institutional investors really flooding the market outside of what they might have done in the past. Like we know they flooded the market around that great financial crash when the housing market kind of took a dip. And but back in the late 70s, early 80s, I don't know how many institutional investors were kind of in the market of buying houses. I don't know if anybody, on here or watching it later on want to comment below if they've seen a big shift of institutional investors buying in the late 70s, early 80s. But this time around, we had millennials wanting to buy, but we had a bunch of institutional investors, and it depends on where you're located. Down here in Georgia, it's a large amount of them. They came in flooding the area, overbidding on people, just to get out, just to win the bid and paying cash. So it also depends on where you're at. But I've seen a lot of that situation happening in this 2020, 2021, 2020, 2022 market. And I guess they thought that everybody was going to be millionaires, David said things change, but at the same time, some things remain the same. That is so true, David. That is so true. Lang said, that's true, Dave. Yes, that is very true. MHOH said Seinfeld would never have existed if they had cell phones. He said if they had cell phones, Seinfeld. I'm like, I like Seinfeld. I think that's a good sitcom. But arrived it did. followed by a quick rise in mortgage rates, leading to a slowdown in sales and affordability challenges as home prices remained elevated. It says a slower rebound this time around. So what does that mean going forward? Will the coming years be similar to the mid to late 80s, which saw the home sales rise whenever rates went down significantly? Just give me 1 second. Sorry, y'all. Sorry about that. I just wanted to make sure. I've been having problems where my surge has been going out when there's too many things plugged in, so I didn't want it to disconnect while we're doing the live. I'll plug stuff back in after I finish. It says, will the coming years be similar to the mid to late 80s, which saw home sales rise whenever rates went down significantly? And then probably not, said Fleming. So Fleming is an economist. He said, while the current real estate market is similar to the market of 40 years ago, mortgage rates are behaving differently. So history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. The rhyme this time will be different because we don't expect rates to decline significantly in the coming years as they did in the mid-1980s, Fleming said. By 1982, the 30-year mortgage rate was starting to descend from its 18% peak in 1981, taking a bumpy ride down to under 10% by 1987, while the spike from less than 3% in 2020 to nearly 8% in 2023 was painful. The course correction to historical norms, meaning somewhere in the 6 and 8% range, wouldn't be as dramatic. Today's rates of around 6.3% aren't expected to get much lower anytime soon. So he's basically saying he doesn't see the rates getting lower, diving that far down. As we saw earlier, rates have, nationally, depending on what your economics standing look like, your debt to income ratio, different things like that, you can possibly get a rate in the 5s currently. So let's look real quick and then we'll get back to this article. Let's check out what Fleming was talking about in regards to the interest rates in the 1980s and him showing us how that kind of dipped and where we're at now. So this is, if you guys want to go to this, the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, Fed, and they kind of track a lot of the data, and you can kind of see different things, housing data, all this different data, income data, different things like that. So anyway, so right here, Fleming was talking about, and right here, if you go to 1981 right here, so he said 1981-ish, interest rates were about 18.28%. And I think that's the highest, might have been 1839, I think. It might be a little higher than that, but about 18%. And then it started to dip as the years went on. It kept dipping all the way down. And then when we got to 1987, it was at about 9%-ish. And then it kept dipping in the 90s, going up a little bit, dipping down, went up again, down. So people, that's why I tell some people when I'm on a live and I talk to like my mom and different things and stuff, when she bought a house, she's like, yeah, my interest rate was at 10%. Or people are like, my interest rate was 9%, or it was, 11%, or different things like that. Again, home prices were cheaper back then, according to his interest rates. They were on a climb up, but they weren't $500,000, right? You could still possibly get a house for about $80,000 with the interest rate being higher, and people's economical, their incomes per se, if were growing accordingly, if they were at a job that was allowing them to actually see raises and different things like that. So as you see, it kept going up and down in the 90s. It kind of hovered around there. And then as we actually got into the 2000s, that's when it hit. It went low and started hitting the 5s and the 6s and the 5s and the 6s and the 5s and the 6s. So we were there for a long time in the early 2000s. So we didn't really start seeing 6s and 5s really until the early 2000s. Before then, well, you saw it right here in the 90s a little bit, but it wasn't consistently standing in the 90s. It was going up and down. But you really saw it kind of stay more in the 6s and the 5s, or maybe the 7s in the 2000s. And then, as of course, when we got into after the great financial situation right here around this time, we saw the interest rates, or mortgage rates, I should say, dip even further down into the 4s and the 3s. So for the last years or so, from like 2000 and 2000 and like 11-ish, 2010, 11-ish, you could get an interest rate for a home in the 4s. And then that kind of went all the way to 2020. So people that might have bought in 2019, 2018, 2017 had an interest rate in the 3s, an interest rate in the 4s. And then it really went all the way down to those 2s in the 2020. So as you can see here, historically, we've never seen interest rates historically ever in the 2s. And even before then, we really didn't see them in the 3s or the 4s. We always would see them higher than that. So that's something to take into consideration in regards to interest rates. And I know, again, it is different because we know that historically home prices were definitely cheaper than they are now, comparable to what the mortgage rates were. Let's see, Son of Jackson, he said, you might want to invest in a mouse pad for your next stream. Do investors, realtors focus on rental properties, or are they focused on real resale value? Yeah, I do need to get a mouse pad. Thank you. I gotta get another mouse pad. So you said, do investors, realtors focus on rental properties, or are they focused on the resale value? Well, it just depends. So if an investor is trying to flip, you are going to be focused on the resale value, depending on how quickly you're trying to flip. If you're an investor that's trying to do a long-term hold, of course you want to focus on the resale too, but you're not really stuck to see what it's going to sell for in the next next couple months or next year or so. So you're more focused on how much can you get for the rent in the area, and does it cash flow? So, so you have some investors, let's take these institutional investors, they just bought in a lot of areas where the school system might not have been the best, but they saw that because the rents were a certain rate, that they could buy a house cheaper, and they could give, let's say, put the rent at $1,700 a month, bought the house for possibly $200,000, put the rent at $1,700 a month, and they were able to cash flow. Even though it might not have been a huge amount of cash flow, because you still want to put some money aside for maintenance, for your management companies, all those things or whatever. But seeing a couple $100s, they probably was like, okay, this makes sense, because overall, if we buy 100 houses in this area, we're going to get a nice return per se. So it just depends on what type of investing you're trying to do. If you're more of a fixer and flipper, you do want to make sure you really focus on that resale value. So you want to make sure wherever you're buying a house at and flipping a house, that it makes sense that by the time you finish that flip, whether it takes you 2 months, 3 months, some people are doing it in a month, which is crazy. You want to make sure that the home values around you are still substantial as far as closing at a certain amount, so you can get that money out of it if you're trying to flip it. So I guess it just depends on the plan or how you kind of want to go and approach what you're doing as an investor. But I noticed that people that are looking at more of like a long-term hold thing, they just want the property value, the property to be in a good structural standing, make sure it's up, it's kept well, maintained well, so that down the line, if they hold it, let's say 10, 15, 20 years, they still can be able to get some type of equity out of the home. So they're more focused on those rental caps, the different things currently happening, and seeing how it kind of makes sense longer down the line. So hopefully that makes sense. But that's what I'm noticing when I talk to investors. They're more just their plans are different. It just depends on what you're looking at overall. So hopefully that answers the question: do realtors focus on rental properties, or are they focused on resale? So yeah, so just depends on how you approach it. All right, let's go back to the article real quick and read some more of this, and then we're going to bring Mark Fleming on. It says in the mid 1980s will not be like the mid 2020s, because the market rebound then was driven by falling mortgage rates, Fleming said in an email. So basically, again, he's stating that in the 1980s, as we saw on the chart, the mortgage rates were going down, and now we're in this stagnant situation where the mortgage rates are not really moving as much. They have nowhere really to go, because they went so low and they had to go back up high in order to kind of fight off inflation, but they can't go but too high because home prices are too high. So there's no way that they're able to move up the interest rates for the mortgage, or the mortgage rates. Let's not say interest rates. There are no way they can move up the mortgage rates to that 10%, 12%, 11%, like, those huge percentages as they did in the past, because the home prices are definitely too high. So if you have a $500,000 house and you move an interest rate up to 10%, how much is that a daggone month for a mortgage? With like $5,000, $6,000 for a house? Maybe more than that. I don't, if you guys want to do the math, I'm not sure, but no one would be able to afford that, to be able to, afford that. So the interest rates can only move but so high without causing everybody basically to be squeezed out of their houses that currently have a mortgage. And we're going to talk about that as well, as far as how much of a percentage of people in America do not have a mortgage. It says now the market will rebound more slowly, not because of lower mortgage rates, but because life happens, he predicted. So this is the thing of things happening in life that'll make people possibly sell, distress situations, people passing away, unfortunately, divorces, maybe people having kids, people are getting older, needing to downsize. So you have, again, life is lifing. You have cycles in which life happens and things happens. And so people typically have to sell due to situations. Today, the challenge is how to grow a market based on life events, not rate events, and do so in a way that is affordable for more who would be homeowners more would-be homeowners who would be able to rely on mortgage rate driven affordability gains. It says a steady increase in home sales ahead. So we already kind of talked about that, and we are going to now dip into a video in which Mark Fleming, he kind of talked in 2019 to CNBC in regards to the housing market. And this was around 2019, but they brought up the issue of what would happen if the mortgage rates rose.
And foreclosures.
What if interest rates rise? And it's an if, because they're going down, but right. What if they do rise?
At some point, they're going to have to rise.
That's what we've been saying for a decade.
3 years on my part, yes. Rising interest rates don't necessarily cause delinquencies and foreclosure, but it's something that will slow down the housing market.
We've seen a lot of news lately that we're seeing riskier mortgages, that we're seeing there's this thing, I won't get all technical and wonky, called the QM patch, which actually allows you to have higher debt and still get a Fannie and Freddie backed mortgage versus your income. With these riskier loans, though, do you expect to see any more delinquencies going forward if people have more debt in their mortgages?
Yeah, so the QM patch is.
So this is interesting, too. I don't know much about this particular loan package. Again, because I'm not a lender, so I haven't dived into this particular loan situation. But I do know that recently there has been, in regards to people borrowing loans, that they're allowing their debt to income ratio to increase. So before, they always wanted to be about like 30% or less. Again, there was a rule called like the 28, what is it, 28-30 rule, something like that. I might be getting it wrong. But you wanted to keep your mortgage and your monthly expenses, per se, when it comes to you paying your rent, your mortgage, or whatever, under a certain percentage a month. And now what lenders have been doing is they're allowing people to be able to maximize up to like 50-something% of their debt to income ratio, which is not very great, because you're barely paying your mortgage. And if something should happen to you and you're in distress, you lose your job, things happen like that, you can, you're not able to save anything, because you're basically putting half of your check towards your mortgage expenses, and you still have your utility expenses, you still have your food expenses. If you have kids, you still have the food for the kids, you have any activities they want to be a part of, you have all these expenses that add up, right? So I found this interesting as well, with them kind of talking about this in 2019.
It's really focused on your sustainable ability to pay, your leveraging how much of your income per month that you actually put towards the mortgage. That increases the risk of a delinquency. But people don't go delinquent just because they're paying more per month. People go delinquent and then potentially into foreclosure later because something happens in their lives: a divorce, death in the family, medical event, loss of job, which is really related to sort of the economy and recession risk. And so it's, if those things happen, there is some risk exposure there by being more, more heavily weighed towards your mortgage payments over everything else. But we've seen that in many times before, and generally that was, in the financial crisis, we'll call it financial innovation, was to layer that with negative amortization, with interest only, with all these other things, and that's not happening today.
And people.
So I found, this particular topic interesting as far as him talking about that, because at that time we were in 2019. They said it wasn't happening, and now we are approaching 2025. And if you guys are currently, in the housing market, as far as looking at houses with a realtor, just looking to see what's happening, and especially when I'm seeing down here in this metropolitan area of Georgia, there are a lot of things happening where people who recently bought within the last year, they're trying to sell because taxes are going up, right? With the taxes going up, home insurance is going up. The mortgage, they can basically sustain the general principal and interest part of the mortgage. And so because of that, a lot of people are trying to get out, but there's no equity, there's no space. Prices are depreciating depending on what part of the metro Atlanta area you live in, or where you currently live at, where you're at right now in America or around the world. You're seeing things kind of level off, prices depreciating, and with that happening is kind of bringing about that distress. And so I'm like, it's very interesting how conversations, how they age, I should say, how they age. All right, let's get back to this article. It says a steady increase in home sales ahead. It says while home sales have remained tepid, hold on. Let me say it makes it TP'd. I don't know if I'm saying it right. TP'd, sorry. This year, the pace is expected to pick up during the second half of the decade. It says in its forecast, 2026-2030, U.S. World Report predicts that existing home sales will gradually rise from around 4.55 million in 2026 to 4.9 in 2023. So they're saying that after this whole situation we're going through in 2025, how we kind of went through in 2023, stuff started to slow down, interest rates climbed, home prices started to, remain high, but then nobody was buying. 2024 kind of hit that cycle. 2025 hit that cycle. Now they're saying they believe in 2026 that we might be, might see more homes kind of hit the market and people kind of trying to sell, and compared to the past few years. Factors that could impede growth include limited suitability, land, higher costs for materials, and the impact of immigration raids on construction. We kind of talked about that whole immigration situation in a couple lives before, but slow growth could be a good thing. The rise in home sales in the mid-1980s did not end well for the housing market. By 1989, the impact of savings and loans prices, as well as the economic recession, led to a multi-year decline. Existing home sales fell from annualized rate of 3.75 million in the late 80s to under 3 million in the early 90s. So again, basically saying how the housing market is repeating itself, right? We're seeing the same thing happening where in the early 2020, 2021, the sales went up, and then as we enter 2025 and we're going into 2026, the sales are going down. So the same thing in regards to that repeating the housing market. Fleming believes that the lessons learned from the SNL era from the subprime lending practices that preceded 2008 financial crisis has made the U.S. housing market less vulnerable. And so this is a thing that I kind of always go back and forth in regards to them saying, oh, well, the 2008, we learned from that. The lenders put stuff in place so it won't happen again. And I'm like, I get it, but that's on the financial side, right? But now we're also having things happen where we're allowing lenders to now turn around and approve people again for above their debt to income levels. They're approving them at the 50% line, right? And with that being the case, they might have put different type of things in place in regards to like the lending practicing part of it, but we have a whole other situation happening now outside of just the lending now. So, and I feel like that is ultimately what's going to happen to create a downward pressure on the housing market, because, we're seeing what the economy is doing now, right? We're seeing people are getting laid off. It's not at a big mass per se, but there is a huge amount of people getting laid off. It depends on where you're at in the housing market down here in this Metro Atlanta market. I'm seeing a lot of distress. I'm seeing, it's not a big amount of foreclosures happening, but there are foreclosures happening. And, we do have people that are unfortunately passing away. So I see a lot of foreclosures. When I look at the foreclosure list, some of the people, when I do the background search on the houses that are on auction, some of these people have passed away, and their family, I guess, can no longer support the property if it's not fully paid off. So it's a lot of different factors that come together to create, like, it's a mixing pot, right? A lot of different factors. My dad said, he said, another crash is coming. Yeah, we don't know. We don't know. I'm like, it's definitely something coming in the housing market. How big of a something it is, we don't know. I don't want to scare people, but I definitely say if you are currently looking to buy a house, it's okay to try to offer a little under. It's like, well, if the house is 700,000, you can't go in there and be like, I'm gonna give you 350. That's just ridiculous. But it's okay to kind of factor out the area, like what's happening around the area, understand the economic situation as far as the economy, understand, like, see how long the house been on the market. Like, you can really be able to play with buying a house as far as putting lower offers in if the house has been sitting on the market for, let's say, 4, 5, 6, 7 months, depending on what type of distress the homeowner is in. So it's like it's like bringing so many factors, because things are definitely happening in this economy that's going to cause a lot of downward pressure on the housing market. All right, so let's stop sharing that. I was going to talk about the savings and loan crisis because I thought it was kind of interesting, but we're not going to get to that tonight, so I'm going to skip that. Maybe we'll talk about that on next live. Let's jump over real quick to this whole thing of how many people in America. Well, actually, let's hit this real quick, this live of this thing real quick about the housing market. Then we'll go over to how many people in America have no mortgages, and then we'll end it off with Zillow is saying that home buyers are back in the housing market. So let's see what this young lady has to say on CNBC about the housing market survey.
Morning, Becky. Now, this is something of a sidewalk survey. Each quarter, we'll ask real estate agents from across the country and in a cross section of neighborhoods just what they're seeing on the ground. Now, here are some of the highlights from Q3, when the average rate on the 30-year fixed mortgage was mostly on the decline, but moved up mid-September. Now, during that time, 49% of real estate agents we surveyed said it was a buyer's market, meaning that buyers had the advantage because homes weren't selling quickly and supply was sufficient. 30% saw it balanced, and just around 21% saw sellers with the advantage. As for prices, 44% said they saw them declining, 38% stable, and just 20% increasing. Now, again, all real estate is local, and market fundamentals are therefore different based on location, of course. Still, the trend is definitely for lower prices. And 89% of our agents reporting having at least one seller who decided to cut their price last quarter. That really shows how kind of over-optimistic sellers still seem to be, despite all the uncertainty in the economy and a slowing housing market. Now, even more drastic, 40% of agents represented sellers who delisted their homes due to those rough market conditions. So what will we see this quarter? Well, 48% of agents expect the market to improve, and 35% think it'll stay the same. Just 17% expect sales to decline. Now, this is just a few pieces of this housing market survey. You can read all of the results much.
So I'm in the sense of, I guess you could say I'm between the stay the same, decline, in regards to the housing market, and it all again depends on where you're located at. I'm down here in the Metro Atlanta area, so I am seeing downward pressure on the housing market. Also, with the new construction coming up, these new construction sales are pushing the resales down, even though a lot of these resales, they're trying to get more money out of their house and not doing really anything to the house no more. And there's a lot of things in the news in regards to new construction, because we all know that the new constructions are not being built like they used to be built in the past. They're kind of being thrown up. If you go and check out some of these inspectors that are going out doing inspections on these new constructions, they're more flimsier. They're not put together. So because of that, even though, they're cheaper and they're giving you these incentives, these new constructions might not be the best option. So resales are still selling, but but the prices of them are higher than the new construction. Anyway, this is also could be a reason too why some people are delisting their homes, is in regards to cities with the most working age residents who have paid their homes. So because their homes are paid off, some of these people might feel like, well, I don't need to sell it right now. I can just wait until, the market gets better, right? Who's to say that the market will get better next year? Who's to say if you don't sell now that your house is going to be worth more next year? We don't know, right? The way the market is kind of trending, it looks like it'll probably be worth less, depending on what we see economically with the downward pressure currently with inflation and what's happening. But some people believe, real estate is an asset that always appreciates, and people don't realize that sometimes it does depreciate during certain times of the economy, right? So right here, this is an article by Jonathan Jones. Sorry, let me go back. Jonathan Jones, he said the rise in mortgage rates began in 2022 has placed significant financial pressure on American households, reshaping the housing landscape. While some homeowners locked in historically low rates during the pandemic era, today's elevated borrowing costs have made it much more challenging for new buyers to enter the market or for existing homeowners to refinance. So we'll go down here to, he says, homeowners who have fully paid off their homes are in a stronger financial position to weather periods of economic uncertainty and elevated rates. According to the Census Bureau data, while approximately 63% of homeowners aged 65 and over have fully paid off their homes, less than 28% of working age homeowners under 65 have done so. This leaves a substantial portion of working population vulnerable to financial stress, especially during times of high interest rates and inflationary pressures. So in totality, they said it's about 40% of Americans who have their homes paid off. So again, if we have 40% of Americans who have their homes paid off, and if they are trying to sell their house, they are going to be like, I'm going to delist it anytime. I'm just going to wait. I don't need to sell it. I can afford it. They might still live in it. It might be a second home. They might feel like I don't want to sell it. I can still be able to afford the home. So you're seeing still some sellers who are stubborn that are like, I don't care what's happening in the economy. I want the price I want. It says home value and housing costs for homeowners by mortgage status. So right here, it is telling us that the homeowners with mortgages have higher home values, incomes, and housing costs. So it's kind of talking about all that. And I want to kind of work down to this right here. Homeowners with a mortgage report a median home of $360,000, significantly higher than the $250,000 median value for homes owned outright. Similarly, households with a mortgage have a median annual income of $121,000. And it says compared to just over $85,000 for those without a mortgage. So basically, they're saying households nowadays have six-figure income compared to the baby boomers or people over 65 whose income might have averaged about $85,000 a year. And we also know that with that income now, most of it is probably fixed income. So with them being able to have no mortgage, they're able to, be hopefully weather the storm financially as far as paying the taxes, the home insurance, and we know those are going up too. And that might be a reason that some of these homeowners, unfortunately, that don't have a mortgage could possibly get squeezed out of their homes as well. Consequently, median housing costs as a percentage of income, including mortgage payments, insurance, utilities, and other related expenses, amount to 19% for homeowners with a mortgage compared to just 9% for their mortgage-free counterparts. It says the figures suggest that mortgage-free homeowners under 65 may prioritize their financial stability over owning higher value properties, may have transitioned to less expensive homes after paying off their debt, or may have inherited their properties. And so, again, maybe someone who is older, their house was worth, let's just say, because I ran into this as well, where some people that were older, they sold their house during the high times of 2021, 2022. They might have got, let's say, $700,000 for their house when it should have only been worth maybe $350,000. Because again, people be very surprised at how the prices increased down here in Georgia. Like when I tell you they shot for like 200%, 300% of increasing the value. I'm like, this is crazy. But a lot of what was happening down here, which people probably didn't realize, is that most of these homes, when the financial crash happened in 2008, 2009, and 2010 window gap, most of these homes didn't get their value back. If they bought in 2010 for $200,000, they didn't see the value of $200,000 again until 2019. So literally once 2019 hit, they saw that value come back into play where their home was worth that amount where they could possibly sell it and be able to get out of it and feel comfortable enough to feel like they made some type of money out of the home after the crash. But then once 2020, once that 2021 period really hit, these homeowners took off, and a lot of those people that saw the crash happened in 2008, 2009 that really wanted to sell their home, but they didn't feel there was no equity from what they paid for it then. They got out in 2022, 2021, 2022, 2023. A lot of them got out, took the cash. Some of them went and rented and waited for the market to cool down. So some of those people that rented, now they're getting back in the market. They still have the cash. They're buying houses fully cash. And then you had some people that were able to take the money and they decided they didn't want to be a homeowner no more. They felt like they experienced the turmoil of that great financial situation in 2007, 2008, 2009. They were like, I don't want to be attached to a home no more. So they just took their money, they got out, and now they're renting and they're living their best life. So, and then, you know, you have people who just paid their mortgage completely off. So it's so many different circumstances going on. So right here it says percentage of homes owned free and clear by state. So right here, this shows you all the states. And this right here tells you how many people, the percentage wise of people who own in these states that don't have a mortgage. So if you're in, I don't know what states you guys are in that currently are watching, but again, I'm in Georgia. So it's about 26% ish people in Georgia who have homes paid off. It looks like these dark blue states are the ones that have the most paid off, 35%. So as you can see, this is Georgia. So this is Alabama, Kentucky. No, this is, I think this is, wait, I'm trying to remember. No, this is Tennessee. So Kentucky, Florida, they have a lot of homeowners, not as many as these states. You got Texas, is about 34%. So you have a lot of the states, more of the southern states kind of see more of homeowners kind of paying off their mortgages. Then of course you can go up north or Midwest. You kind of see some things happening here. So that's very interesting. If you guys want to know where we're seeing the most people who don't have any more, that mortgages are paid off, it says mortgage payoff rates vary substantially across the country. While at the national level, the share of homeowners under age 65 who have paid off their homes is 27%. Not all areas have equal rates of free and clear home ownership. Being mortgage-free is strongly negatively correlated with both household income and home value. So certain states in the South, like West Virginia, 41%, Mississippi, 40%, and Louisiana, 36%, all have shares of owner-occupied homes that are paid off above 35%. So yeah, so Mississippi, all these states over here, Louisiana. It says at the end of the spectrum, Maryland has the lowest rate of owner-occupied homes that are paid off at 18.4%. Other states with low rates of free and clear homeownership among the working age population include high income prices, Colorado, Massachusetts, and Utah. At the metropolitan level, 9 out of 15 large metros for free and clear homeownership are found in the South, led by Greenville, South Carolina, 32.1%. Conversely, more expensive coastal cities in desirable locations in the Mountain West, such as DC, 16%, Denver, Colorado, 18%, have the lowest share of owner-occupied homes that are paid off. So it goes down here and it breaks down the cities with the most residents who have paid off their mortgages. So you can kind of see that right here. Let me see if you guys can see. I don't know. Let me make it a little bit bigger. So these are the spaces in which these are the cities. I made it a little bit bigger so you can kind of see where people's mortgages are paid off. So South Carolina, Oklahoma, Texas. So there's a lot of southern states. You have some Midwest in here, Michigan. You have some northern states, New York, Florida. So these are like very smaller, honing into like the cities that have the most homeowners whose mortgages are paid off. And then these are like the bottom large metros. So different metros that have that are at the bottom of homeowners paying off their mortgage as far as being free and clear. So we have a lot of that. So that might also be a reason too why you're seeing some people being stubborn in regards to wanting to sell their house at a lower amount, and that they're just like, well, I'll just delist it and I'll take it off the market. MHOA said, LOL, nobody's lived here long enough to pay off a mortgage. So he said no one's lived around you in Colorado and Denver enough to kind of pay that mortgage off. And Denver is very pricey. I had, thoughts of wanting to move to Denver, Colorado, really outside of Denver and Lakewood, because I like Lakewood. But it is very pricey. All right, so we're going to end the live with this conversation that Zillow had in regards to the housing market's fall surprise. Buyers are back, and Zillow says the momentum isn't over yet. So I don't know how you guys feel about this. Do you feel like the momentum isn't over yet? Again, there's always going to be people that have to sell. There's always going to be people that have to buy, right? So there's always going to be moving parts. Yes, there's still people down here in this Metro Atlanta market that are buying homes. Homes are getting on the market 4 days. Some of them are going under contract. Some of them are closing in 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, some in a month, because people are still purchasing. So there's always going to be somebody that has to buy and has to sell. Emma Joy say Lakewood's not bad. It's where I do most of my shopping. Okay, yeah, I like Lakewood. I'm like, it's real close to downtown Denver, but it's outside a little bit of the city per se. So you can kind of go downtown, retreat, and go to Lakewood. So I like Lakewood. I enjoyed my time when I was in Denver, and I stayed at a hotel in the Lakewood vicinity. So I like Lakewood. And so it says right here, Zillow's September 2025 housing market report reveals an unexpected surge of activity during what is typically real estate's slow season. So what they're saying now is that basically our slow season, which is the fall into the winter, is kind of switching around. So most people say the springtime, that's when you list your house, that's when you sell, that's when people are doing the moving, people are doing the buying. But now, of course, we've seen a very slow moving pace in the spring this year and last year in 2024, that now they're saying, oh, we think 2025 fall into the winter is going to be that turn in which people are going to be buying. It says a dip in mortgage rates combined with a strong stock market sparked renewed energy among both buyers and sellers after a sluggish August. New listings climbed 3% year over year in September, reversing the 3% decline month earlier. On a monthly basis, lists dipped 2%, outperforming the historical average of 9%, tumbling heading into the fall. So they're saying an increase, and I think this is all Yahoo kind of put here for that. It says the total inventory slipped from just 1% from August to September, but sits at 14% higher than last year's levels. The report also shows a shift in balance of power. 15 of the nation's 50 largest metros are now buyers markets, up from 6 last year. So now they're going to show us the different metros that are buyers markets. So it says Zillow's heat index names the top buyer-friendly metros. So it said Miami, Florida, New Orleans, Louisiana, Austin, Texas, Jacksonville, Florida, Indianapolis, Indiana. In contrast, seller-leaning markets. So these are the markets that supposedly are more best for sellers right now. Buffalo, New York, Hartford, Connecticut, San Jose, California, San Francisco, California, and New York, New York. So I don't know about the San Francisco, California, because I've been, there's some agents that have been saying that San Francisco, California, they had a dip, and especially more in that condo market. That it's becoming it's kind of shifting more into it's more like a buyer over there in regards that you can get a condo cheaper than what you can get a couple years ago as a buyer. So I don't know, but I'm not in San Francisco, California market. So it's just from what I've been reading and listening to. Recent nationwide data reinforces Zillow's message of resilience. According to Freddie Mac, the average 30-year fixed mortgage rate has dropped to about 6.19%, its lowest point of 2025. Meanwhile, existing home sales rose to a 7-month high in September as affordability began to improve, and even as 15% pending sales were canceled amid nervous buyers, which we talked about on a couple lives ago, how several buyers have canceled about 15%. I think it was like 56,000 buyers canceled their contracts due to inspection reports, being nervous. There are a lot of buyers out here that are timid and very scared, feeling like, could the market crash tomorrow? And if the market crashed tomorrow, do I feel like I will have paid more than what the house is worth, next to me? So, and it says today, these trends suggest the housing market is stalling rather than overheating. Zillow's economists expect this unseasonably active fall to carry into holidays, powered by easing borrowing costs and pent-up demand. So they are saying, in regards to that article, that the housing market will pick up in the fall going into winter. So I don't know what you guys' thoughts are. Let's see. Vamp King 466. Google AI said a few days ago that buying power of home buyers would probably return before C19 levels again by 2030. Yeah, I believe as time keeps going on that the buying power will definitely return for those home buyers. You have to give it time to play out, right? We're currently in a market, we're in economical strain in regards to what's happening nationwide, globally, really. And it's not just our market as home buyers in America, but there's also Canada, there's also European markets. There's strain on every market, housing market, economy all over the world. The central banks have been, talking about different things as well. And so we have to be mindful that if you are going to buy in this current market, just make sure you understand, what can factor out going forward. But I do believe if you really are fearful and to purchase in this current market, I think that it might be best to kind of wait, kind of see where the dust kind of settles. And you just have to play your cards. It's almost like a game of poker at this point, right? You don't know what's going to happen. We don't have a crystal ball. We can't tell the future. But I think most buyers might be better if they wait to the end of 2026, early 2027, and possibly, like you said too, in regards to 2030. I've saw some reports saying that 2030 might be a good time to people to get back in the home purchasing space and have that buying power. MHOA said a pandemic will leave a scar that lasts for a decade. And I truly believe that MHOA, this pandemic will definitely leave a scar. And all they've been doing is putting a Band-Aid on the scar, but we got to allow the scar to actually heal and get back to normalcy in regards to this economy. So I definitely believe that MHOA. But I want to thank you guys for joining me tonight on this Sunday. Please, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit that like button. Also hit the share button to share this live with anybody that might need to hear about real estate news and what's currently happening. And I hope you guys come back next Sunday and join us in a great conversation. I appreciate everyone who jumps into the live stream. Son of Jaxer, thanks for coming. He said, great info this stream. Would still recommend either a new mouse pad or move your mic higher off the table. Everyone smash like, but okay. So is the mic too, what do you mean? It's too far back or too higher? But I gotta, just any suggestions, please. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you again, Lang, for joining as well. MHOA, appreciate you being here. Vape King 466, thanks for joining in. James Clark, my dad, thanks for coming in. David Matney, appreciate you as well as always. And Eddie, thanks Eddie as well. Small Horn for jumping on tonight. And if I've missed anybody, I apologize, but I appreciate everybody being here tonight. Have a great Sunday, and I look forward to seeing you guys next Sunday live over here on the channel. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.